today I'm talking with Paul Glover from a company called Brando in the UK, and we're discussing automated agile. So, Paul, can you give us the elevator pitch about automated agile, please?
Yeah, so automated agile is really a way of thinking, and all it really is understanding that AI can utilize AI throughout the product delivery lifecycle, and in doing so, add productivity. But there isn't really a strong understanding of how to do that all the way through. There's individual use cases which are important, but it's about leveraging that rich context to produce great outputs. So what automated agile does is think about the whole product delivery lifecycle, and how you can get the most out of it utilizing AI.
So then if we look at the origin story of automated agile, what challenges did you have bringing it to where it is now?
Well, I think it's about understanding for people, I think, because it moves so quickly and that's overwhelming. So what automated agile doesn't try and do is say, use this tool, use this process, use this way of thinking. What it does do is come up with a way of thinking about that to understand, well, what drives the best performance out of AI at each of these steps, and how do we create a structure that allows you to put new tools and new processes in. And I think as a concept, that's something that people are kind of thinking about that on a use case specific sense now. You see a lot of tools out there that will solve individual problems, but in terms of a whole workflow, there are limited people out there really thinking about that and helping businesses. And that's really what this is automated agile about, rather than being a product. It's more around how do we help businesses understand what the next step forward is, because the floor underneath them is changing at a rapid pace.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. Star Trek, and I'm thinking the holodeck in particular. Is there any similarity between the holodeck and automated agile?
Yeah, the holodeck theory is something I like to talk about a lot, and it probably rings true with like nerds and people who've watched Star Trek. But ultimately, it's all about, you have an idea, and then you have your product, and in between those two is a lot of friction that is generally what I do for a living. And then that's what the product delivery life cycle is. Whereas in a holodeck in Star Trek, you walk into a room and you say, give me 1920s London, and it will. And that's really how software should be. You should be able to speak to a tool and say, this is the product I want, and it shows it you straight away. And then, I'll change that and I'll update it. So in our tests that we've done, utilizing a process with automated agile at its heart, we've managed to create prototypes, inside of 90 minutes, 75 minutes for one type of prototype. And what that does is put something in front of a customer and give them the opportunity to see whether or not they want to make any changes to it. And that's what we're trying to do. That's why we call it the holodeck theory. It's that how do we close down that friction as much as humanly possible to make the process of customer feedback and customer improvement as immediate as possible, because the primary measure of progress is working software, right? So it's about how do we keep those phases small, keep the question that we're asking AI to complete as simple as possible, but yet make that forward progress more rapidly than we would be able to using traditional agile methodologies.
It reminds me then, because of this, talking to the engine rather than prompting it by typing. Do you remember, you probably do, a couple of years ago, up until maybe last year, there was a big push by all of the senior tech people, in Silicon Valley, saying, everyone will have to learn how to write prompts and code. But there was one CEO who said, no, you won't. Within 12 months, you won't have to do any of that. The AI will do it for you. And I'm guessing that's where automated agile is heading, is that you don't need those technical skills. You just talk to your engine and it creates from there. Is that right? Have I got that right?
I'm a business analyst originally, and business analysis, I think, comes from the place of anybody can do it, but you hire a business analyst because they've got the skills to do it in a way which is lean and not wasteful. And I think that's all prompt engineering is for me. I think anybody could go through 30 cycles of asking an AI to produce something, and it does, and it's not quite right. Or they could make sure someone has got that precision of language so that when they ask it a question, you're getting a very specific answer out the back of it. And AI likes people who help itself. So I think yes, you certainly could get the prompt engineering piece to be done by AI, and at some point in the future there will be a level of understanding of the AI, so it will help somewhat with that. But you're never going to get to the point where precision of language doesn't matter. So I think maybe prompt engineering will change as a methodology, but that precision is always going to be necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, certainly with the work that I do, if I write a prompt, and it could be a large prompt, if I'll type one up, I will then ask the LLM that I'm talking with to reshape that prompt to make it tighter and more accessible to the engine. Sometimes you just look at it and you go, that's a third the size of what I typed up, and it's and it works brilliantly.
Yeah, and there's a whole industry, isn't there, around prompt tuning, where you might be able to create a great answer from a prompt, but is it token efficient? And I think once we get to that point, but really what we're doing is we're trying to take work away from the product delivery lifecycle to improve that productivity, and we're seeing maybe 30% increase in productivity off the back of this kind of methodology and thinking. So when you're doing that, you can put that into creativity, really. But in terms of prompt engineering, definitely you can utilize AI to help you with that, and that's what we think across the whole product delivery life cycle. It's just how to get the most out of it. What benefit can I get right now?
That then leads me to think about context, and I'd be interested to know why context is so critical in AI, in particular in automated agile. Why does it become smarter?
Yeah, well, it's about making sure you ask it that very specific question again. So I think in terms of automated agile, one of the key fundamentals of it is you build a series of documentation which accurately and fully describes a product. Now that would be contrary to your traditional agile methodologies, which say that you can't really understand what you want at the beginning of a project, because who does? You want to iterate once you gather customer feedback. Well, what automated agile tries to do is it creates that 100% understanding of where your product is right now based on the information you've got right now, so you can build that product to 100% level and get that immediate feedback. And rather than spending weeks on your document, you want to make sure that it can be done inside the call that you're having with the customer straight away. And that's where automated agile kind of flips some of these traditional methodologies on its head, where documentation might not be as important as the people and the understanding in the room. Well, when the reason for that is because of all the time that you have to spend producing that documentation. It makes it a wasteful action. Whereas when you're utilizing things like AI processes, it'll produce that documentation immediately. I mean, you can check it immediately. And then when you're asking the AI a question in the future, it's got all of this information that it utilizes alongside what you're saying to it to then give you that better answer. So this is where some of the prompt engineering methodologies and way of talking work. You talk about single shot prompts and stuff like that, and each of those will give you an answer, and that answer might save you 30%, 40% of the work. So what automated agile tries to do is build structures of information so that instead of that 30%, we're aiming for 60% or 70% by giving that additional context of what we're trying to do to the AI when it produces that answer.
So then let's bring it back into from a conceptual theoretical into the real world. Could you walk us through a typical day for a team that's using automated agile?
Yeah, so I would say there's no team using automated agile right now in anger. It's at the experimental phase. So we've done 3 tests on it so far. So the first test we did was with a team of 10 consultants. What we did with that is we tried to produce a prototype, and that was very simply ask it to produce a requirements document, some technical information based on the feedback that we gave it. And what that allowed us to do is produce a set of documents which we can then add to what we call a RAG database, which is retrieval augmented generation. Now, in this scenario, we were utilizing Claude. Claude is a ChatGPT type of model, and what we tried to do is utilize its projects functionality, and that allows us to essentially add information into a database so that when we ask it future questions, it's got the context and the information to give us an answer. So what we did is we produced a product design and those requirements and technical documentation. We added it all into the RAG database so that when we're asking it future questions, it knows what to do. And then we ask it to produce a thin prototype and then try to fix that. And we did that in about 75 minutes. That was stage one. Step two was kind of build upon that, because what it did is produce a load of code which isn't necessarily very readable. So the next stage was about, well, if we're asking it to produce these documents and then we're asking it to produce code, to what standard should it be doing that? And one of the key things I see people talk about is well, it produces code that nobody can read, for example, is something I've heard frequently. Well, it'll only do that if you don't tell it not to. So it's about producing a coding standard that it's happy to work to. And in automated Agile, what we want to do is make it highly modular, and each individual code file is single responsibility. And we do that because what we want to do is ask the AI the simplest possible question we can do, and then give it the best possible context we can do to answer that question well. So the second version of that, we did it with the same set of 10 consultants, and that produced, it took us a little bit longer, another 15 minutes. It was an hour and a half to produce a working prototype. But instead of it being a single Python file that did everything, it was a series of modular files. All were built to a set standard. And then what we can utilize that with then is there are code tools such as GitHub Copilot, a common one, but Cursor is one that we're utilizing. And what that Cursor allowed you to do is to take those files, put them inside of Cursor, and then put these files in a chat with Cursor and say, just build this, and it'll just build it straight off the bat for you. Now, something that was really key in our second test that we saw is a bug came up. And when you get that bug, you try and understand in automated Agile, well, where does that bug come from? Is it a process problem? Is it a requirements problem? And we found that it was a problem in the process because it was an error that wasn't written in our code documentation. So all we then do is update the code documentation, and next time we run that process, that code won't exist. So it becomes self-improving, gives you its own feedback, allows you to respond to that feedback, and that's where you lift it from your 40 to 50% of time saved and productivity increased up and up and up by continuously improving based on that feedback.
That's, I mean, the numbers that you've given me so far, that's impressive. I mean, it looks 3 or 4 months ago, there was a big hoo-ha about ChatGPT 1. And how it could reason and how it could learn from itself, and everyone was raving about that. But this kind of, in a way, takes it to the next level. Is that right?
Yeah, it's trying to build a process which is self-improving, and you understand the weaknesses in that process based on the feedback that you're getting from your customer and from bugs. Effectively, bugs are feedback. And because that process is machine built and is essentially built on top of statistical models, it allows you to do things like probability prompting, which is you ask a question. Instead of asking the LLM one question and getting an answer, you'll ask exactly the same question 20 times, and then you'll coalesce those answers down. And that gives you that kind of steady way of working, which you can then iterate and improve upon. So if you find that your code is being produced in a way which is unreadable, then give it that feedback. Improve your documentation so that it doesn't get produced in that way. Test how successful that is, and keep iterating that until it's producing something that you're comfortable with. It's about taking responsibility for making sure that the AI produces the right data by giving it the tools to do so. And if you think about it, that's no different than humans. We wouldn't get a group of humans and put them together into a process and just expect everything to work without some training and development.
Oh, I don't know. I've been in enough companies to do.
Well, you're not supposed to.
The elephant in the room at the moment with AI is if I'm being asked to do, or if AI is picking up the slack and doing a whole lot of tasks, what happens to the people who were doing it before AI? Are they right-sized, as companies have always said for decades, or is there some other way of tapping into the brains and experience of those people?
Yeah, I think this is an important question, and I think it's one I get asked a lot by people who are concerned. Is AI going to come take my job? And I think there'll be companies where they will utilize some of these processes in place, and they will lose 30% of people. And I think that would be the wrong thing to do, because really, if you look at what's happened with tech, when Stack Overflow came out, when the internet came out, these kind of jobs explode because what this is doing is increasing productivity. And when you increase productivity, you're reducing the cost of implementing change effectively. And that change often has value. And every organization I've ever worked in has always had a backlog of value that's just 3 times as long as the people that have got to deliver it. So I think you will find that companies will cut people, and their competitors that don't and use that extra productivity to innovate and produce better experiences for the customer. I mean, how many websites have you been on where it's been an experience that you've thought, oh, this is really good, compared with ones that you've hated? Well, you've now got more opportunity to be able to challenge those original ways of working and fix those problems. So I think this is going to cause an explosion in technology jobs. They might not be exactly the same jobs, because what automated Agile does is support everybody in each one of their roles. All of their roles are still important. You still fulfill a specific need, and they'll just be able to produce them or do them more efficiently. So I think you might see some changes in jobs, but ultimately you're going to get, much bigger tech industry, I think, out the back of this.
Totally agree with you. I mean, one of the things that we do at Amigos is that we're very hot on people-focused AI, so that, if we go into a company, talk to the CEO, and the elephant in the room, are people going to go? And we always say to them, no, don't get rid of your people. Keep them. Let them be more creative. Give them, free rein to come up with a whole lot of stuff, and listen to the youngest in the group. Set up teams, listen to the youngest rather than the highest paid person in the room, and they will create an environment that'll make your business sing, because it's taking it in directions you wouldn't normally think of. So like you, I think keeping your staff and letting them be creative is far more intelligent thing to do.
I think so, because anybody who's a tech professional who's worked in an organization could probably sit there and write a 2-year backlog themselves out of things that they can see and improve inside the business, help better ways of helping people work. And they might get to a point where, the business is so efficient that they don't need as many people anymore. But we're years away from that, I think, in the vast majority of businesses. Nothing to worry about, I would say, in the short term to medium term.
Go back to the late 90s and the early 2000s, before social media came around in 2004. I was building websites and using, Macromedia Dreamweaver. And, the websites, like we were talking websites a couple of minutes ago, so the websites were pretty crude and pretty horrible. And then CSS was introduced, and suddenly websites went into a usability sort of overdrive, and they became fabulously. They look gorgeous. They really were ergonomically simple for the user, and the whole industry exploded in terms of people suddenly getting in and making beautiful websites. And I think AI is going to do exactly the same thing. It's not going to become this monster that eats the population, but it'll be something that just takes business and humanity to a new level.
If you're working the tech industry, you're probably right. There are other industries that will be less nicely handled. If you're working the call center industry, you're in trouble. But there are some industries that are going to get decimated by it. But I think, certainly in the tech industry, the people who work in the tech industry are going to change the world, I think. And if we can do that twice as fast or more, then all the better.
Let's talk about automated agile and businesses and getting started with automated agile. What's the first step for an organization who wants to move into that space? What should they do?
I think the same thing as you would do with any technology or any methodology, and that's set up something like a working group or a community of interest that assesses each of these new methodologies and ways of working and process changes, and gives you an objective view of whether it's a success or not. So that would be the first thing I would do. And automated agile, is a series of steps you can take in that process. But I wouldn't do any of those steps without verifying whether it works for you as an organization. So step one, build a structure that allows you to verify. And then step two is around making sure your data is right as an organization. So any AI-led process thrives on well-constructed, easy-to-read data. And so if you're making sure that you're utilizing tools like Jira and Azure DevOps, for example, if they're common tools in organizations, having that structured in the right way so that you can get the right data out of it is important, especially as those tools are coming into this new age now. Jira's got agents inside it that allow you to do some of the automated agile process utilizing that. Azure DevOps has something similar called Modern Requirements, which is a plugin that does something along those lines. So yeah, get your data right. Build a process that allows you to judge whether what you're doing is the right thing or not. And then either find yourself a partner who knows about these things strongly, or empower your people to learn about it, because it moves really, really quickly. It's almost a full-time job keeping up with what's going on. There's lots of information out there on the internet, but how do you get it and make it work for your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I come back to the point is if you're putting teams together to either design or implement some of the business ideas that directions we should be going, is listen to the youngest members of the team. Just don't discount them because they're not the highest paid person in the room, because their ideas will come out of left field, and you will suddenly, if the old people will have to go, hang on, that's a bloody good idea. So okay.
Well, I think we can listen to everybody though, can't we? I think it's good. It's good to listen to all levels, to these kind of things. And even one of the great things about AI is something we call system zero thinking, which is essentially you can utilize it as a hard drive that sits outside your brain. So don't think that because you've got no knowledge in things like machine learning or things like that, that you're necessarily at a disadvantage, because what you can utilize is AI to get you to that 80% knowledge in those kind of things. And then you can understand whether it's a reasonable approach to do as a business. And then you bring in the specialist to do it. So I think you can utilize AI as a force multiplier, even in the thinking of how to apply AI.
Most definitely. All right. One last question for you, Paul. Where do you think automated agile will be in, say, 3 years' time?
Yeah, well, I mean, automated agile really has no intrinsic value. It's just a brand name for how do you use AI in the best possible way to have a PDLC which is productive. So I see that thinking of that AI and PDLC to be something that there's strong investment in right now. I think it'll get consistently more and more productive. And I think what I see automated agile in is trying to keep up with that and putting it into that kind of way of working that people can understand and apply in their own business. So what I'm hoping automated agile becomes is something that people collaborate on, in different countries and in different ways of working, so that we can all sift through quite a lot of the noise that's out there, really, and really get to the value in a way which people can collaborate on together and improve.
I've got a friend that I've known since my early 20s. He's a mechanic. And over the years, everyone thinks a mechanic, blue overalls and, wrenches and screwdrivers and spanners. And over the years, he's been blown away by how technology has come into his industry. And now he doesn't get his hands dirty because everything is so, tightly wound together. He just plugs in a little box underneath the steering wheel, and that little black box just tells him everything he needs to know about everything in the car, not just the engine, but the electrics, everything, every component. And so it just saves him hours and hours of, rather than, undoing stuff, having a look at it, putting it back, just instant. And that's happened quietly with no one realizing it's going on except for the mechanics. And I think, unfortunately, you're right. AI at the moment has this big bubble or name around it, a whole industry of people hyping it up. But, in 2 years' time, when it's all calmed down, people will just see, actually, this is pretty bloody productive. And, I don't know what we were scared about.
Yeah, and we won't change very much what it is we do. It'll just be quicker and more effective. And I think one of the slides I have on a deck I show people when I'm talking about AI is maths teachers with big placards saying no to calculators.
Yes,
And I think
I'm old enough to remember that. Yeah,
yeah, and I think and that's where we're at. It's the same like Luddites conversation again, isn't it? And yes, it'll be disruptive. Yes, people will lose their jobs, but there'll be new jobs that pop up, and those jobs won't be in times tables, and we'll be taking away a lot of effort, and especially when robotics comes along. But there'll always be a need for human creativity.
I remember this is going back 3, maybe 4 years ago. Marks and Spencer's Marks and Spencer in England were putting their staff through courses at M&S's expense on coding and things like that. And I can't remember, I think it was before AI, but they were putting the staff through various coding, and you could get a qualification, a recognized qualification in computer programming or whatever, so that because M&S saw that they were going to, people were going to, move out, and they were going to shrink the workforce and everything. And so they were preparing their people as much as they possibly could as a good employer to, make sure they had something to go to after, leaving M&S, which I thought is brilliant. And if companies can do that here with the AI rush, then more power to them.
Yeah, and I think that kind of retraining people who are already advocates for your business and already know your business very well into the kind of role that adds value to that business in the new age is a powerful thing to do.
Yeah.
And more and more organisations are working in that way, but I think it's something that should be government led in terms of supporting organisations in doing that, because if we utilise AI well, it'll change things quickly. And for the better, but in doing so, there'll be some friction around people's roles, and we need to make sure we support them into the new roles that AI creates. And the private sector will cover that, and I think it should. But I think strong government support is only going to benefit everybody. Some say this is the fourth industrial revolution. I'm a Manchester boy, so I'm from the epicenter of the last industrial revolution. And I think that every time that this happens is disruptive, but the governments that push this kind of thing happening inside of the country and support it will see strong benefits, because much like a company which is embracing this will be able to be more competitive against a company that isn't. It's the same at a country level too. And especially in countries where there's strong like knowledge industries like the UK. So I think I see it as a really massive opportunity. We need to run out and grab it with both hands as quickly as we can, and that's what we're trying to do.
Paul, I've got one more question for you. What would be your parting words if a company is listening to you now, of senior leaders or a CEO or an entrepreneur? What would be your parting words to encourage them to get on board?
Yeah, start now, don't wait, because all of this is very much layering. So, you can put some effort into it and you can start to get some benefit out right now. But once you get that structure right, you'll be able to implement new tools. It's about being fit for the future. So I think the longer you wait, the longer you procrastinate around, well, I'm not 100% sure what to do, the further you're going to get behind on that. Because I think if you can get the PDLC right and that process and start from there, and that can start improving your business, well, at 30% faster than you're doing it right now. Think how much that layers on a year-by-year basis or a month-by-month basis, and how far behind you're going to get your competitors if they're doing it and you're not. So I do think it's something, start straight away, because there's money at stake at the end of the day. So and this is an opportunity to improve your productivity, and you should see it as an opportunity rather than a fact. And if there's an opportunity there that other people and other organizations have found great success in, then just test it in your organization. Start to build the skills now, because these skills are very expensive in the market. So you've got the opportunity at the moment to train people and to give people the opportunity to self-train and still stay, roughly ahead of where the market is. Whereas you wait 6 months to a year, you're going to get to the point where, as an organization, you have to start hiring these people in, and then who wants to be the person who comes in and teach an organization this stuff? If you're doing this, you want to work for an organization which teaches you. So, I think there's an important gap that's going to start happening in between the organizations that are working in these kind of AI first ways and the organizations that aren't, and that gap's going to start to widen over the next 18 months.
I think two things that come to mind with that. One is it's an opportunity cost if you don't get involved. It's going to cost you business. But secondly, if you delay getting your people trained in how to write prompts, for example. I mean, Forbes ran about a month ago. Forbes in magazine ran a few articles on prompt engineers and what they're charging at the moment. And if you're really good, and these guys, these guys and girls within 2 or 3 years, they'll probably be able to buy themselves an island because they're making so much money. Now, you take that forward 12 months and some companies aren't going to be able to get on board in 12 months' time and afford, as you quite rightly say, to get someone involved to train their people up. So you've got to get involved now because otherwise it's a cost.
And the same goes for individuals. Like, think of your skills as a marketplace. Where do you want to position your skills in the future? You don't want to be the last consultancy that does Prince 2. So I think you want to make sure that your skills are at the forefront of the market so that you can get the most value from them.
There's a colleague in the communications and marketing industry here in Adelaide, my town. He has for many years written small medium-sized businesses marketing plans, and he would go research the company, get all their literature, find out read through it, come up with their marketing voice and all this sort of stuff. Now he just goes to Perplexity or ChatGPT and says, analyze this website, which is their website, and here's some PDF documents they've got. Tell me what their tone of voice is and write a 12-month marketing plan in written words and everything. And, 3 minutes later, he's got 12 months worth of marketing broken down by social platform and all in the voice of that company. It's just brilliant.
And that's essentially what automated agile is in the technology process. You go and you give it some information, some domain information, and it'll produce a requirements document, and that won't be the requirements document you use. It'll be 80% of the way there, like a junior BA produced it for you, but you'll have to tweak it and get it right. But it just saves you so much time getting to that point. And this is some of the thinking that we've got around automated agile, that is much easier to have something that you can criticize. Like if you want an answer on the internet, you give them the wrong answer and then loads of people come correct you. Well, it's much easier to look at a requirements document which is wrong and then fix it than it is to create the whole thing from scratch, because it's just easier to think that way than it is to create it from brand new. And so that's what we're trying to do with automated agile is give you an answer. It might not be the best answer, but at least it's something for you to start from, and that'll save you time.
Paul, thank you so much for this chat today. Really appreciate it. If people in Britain wanted to get hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah, they can contact me on my email, which would be paulglover@brando.com.
Excellent.